What's going on, YouTube? This is Aaron Trevino back with another wonderful episode down here in the beautiful state of Texas. And we have a wonderful guest from Chicago, Illinois, Matt Thomas. How you doing today, Matt?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on, Aaron. As we were just talking a little bit before we hopped on, the temperatures have drastically changed here in Chicago, which means winter is here. So we are bracing in Chicago for what's to come.
Yeah, I think if I'm not mistaken, I think I saw it on, either your story or someone else's Instagram story today. And I saw that. I thought, man, I guess it's the beginning of the cold, right?
Texas has its benefits, definitely, as we head into the winter. That's for sure. So I'm envious of you.
Yeah, it's funny. We had a little bit of complaining today. It was too cold. It was 73 degrees.
Oh, you probably had to break out the long sleeves.
Yeah.
That's tough.
Yeah. No, I know you guys laugh at us, but absolutely, Matt. It's a pleasure to have you on the show. And for those of us who aren't too familiar with you, would you introduce yourself, please?
Absolutely. So I'm Matt Thomas. I'm a real estate agent here in Chicago, Illinois. I work with Baird and Warner downtown Chicago. So I service the Chicagoland area. I bought and live in West Loop, which is a neighborhood here near the Loop downtown. My office is in Lincoln Park here on the north side, and I've helped buyers, sellers, investors, tenants, you name it, around the Chicagoland area since 2018. So looking forward to a great conversation and excited to maybe enlighten your audience about Chicago. Maybe that's a little bit foreign to them.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I'm curious, you kind of mentioned being in the business, a bit about Chicago. I'm curious as well. Did you grow up in Chicago, or how did you get into this part of the real estate business?
I have moved all around the country. I've lived in 6 or 7 different states now, but I was born and raised in Mesa, Arizona. I lived outside of Philadelphia for a long time, but Chicago, I found my way here in my professional world. Before I was in real estate, I sold enterprise data storage, and I was the Chicago sales rep for a company that sold large data storage in the back end of mid to enterprise size companies. So I did that for a number of years, and it really was how I was introduced and came to know the city. And in the process of falling in love with the city, I sort of fell out of love with my job and transferred into real estate because it felt like a better focus for some of my sales efforts.
Yeah, and I find that so interesting as well. I think it's so great being able to be a part of different different cities and different cultures and kind of finding out what you like. But you also mentioned how as you fell in love with the city, you fell out of love with your job, right? Can you kind of explain that, what exactly happened and what, pushed you forward to where you are now?
Absolutely. I think for so many of us, when I graduated, I'm sure you can see in the background, I went to Notre Dame and I was just told to get a great job and go into the world and work hard and you'll succeed. And I did that. I joined an awesome, reputable company. They gave me incredible training and they got me the truly the best start I could ever ask for in the tech sales world. But I didn't love it. Tech sales wasn't for me. As much as everybody's told that it's high paying and it's a great spot for them, I just wasn't in love with the day to day. The way I like to sum it up is I felt like I was wining and dining executives so that they could nickel and dime me at the closing table. And that wore on me over time to the point where I said, the skills that I've developed here are sound. Solution-based selling is a skill set that you can deploy anywhere in your business. But the way I was applying it didn't make sense to me anymore. And I didn't feel in alignment with the company mission. I didn't feel motivated by what I was doing. And to me, those were the strongest indicators ever that I needed to change, not the skill set I was using, but how I was using it. And that's really what motivated me to find a different sales possession where I could still, or sales profession where I could still use those skills, but deploy them with a customer where I could get more closely ingrained with them, where I could actually be an advisor that they trusted and help them make educated decisions, and where, frankly, the relationships weren't so pay to play.
Yeah, absolutely. And the pay to play thing I think is so interesting as well, and it's neat. It sounds like a testament to to courage and faith, but also a sense of self-awareness too, because it would have been easy for you to kind of roll over and accept where you were, and that you didn't you knew that maybe your skill set would better suit you elsewhere, and that can be very difficult for people to realize.
I think back on a conversation I had with a mentor, and he gave me great advice that I think of to this day. When you're thinking about a future path, a career path, a life path, whatever it might be, envision yourself 10 years down the line in that path and think about, do you really want to be there? Is that where you envisioned yourself going? Does it align with your goals? Is it where you think your life should be headed? And when I thought down the path I was headed on in tech sales 10 years into the future, I was really unhappy with the vision that I saw. It was not where I wanted to be. It was out of alignment with what I thought I needed and wanted. And that became an easier decision, truly, to leave and make a massive leap into real estate when I did. It was much easier once I had answered the fundamental question of this is what I want to do, and this is what I don't want to do.
Absolutely. No, and I think that's excellent that you were able to obviously, kind of sharpen your skills and learn a lot in that side of the business, but also really translating to where you are now. So out of anything, you could have done any sort of sales role. You could have, I don't know, sold construction equipment or sold software again or
There's a
whatever.
lot of things to sell, that's for sure.
Yeah, I guess a lot of things to sell, right? So why this part of the business? What speaks to you about real estate?
I grew up in a real estate household. Truly, every single member of my direct family has, in some capacity, tied to real estate. My mom has been a practicing full-time real estate advisor for over 30 years. My dad had his license off and on throughout the years. They had partnerships together at times. We've always invested or flipped homes throughout my childhood. So even my brother became a lender at some point, my younger brother. So we all got into it. I think there's a strong pull to the evidentiary fact of real estate is it's tied to wealth. Like there are very few ultra wealthy people in the world that do not have real estate tied to them in some capacity. And so the premise of that is that you can engage with it in some capacity to make your life better. And so I grew up knowing that, seeing that, whether it was us buying homes, flipping homes, whether it was helping clients or seeing how people reacted with my mom or the communities that we became a part of because she helped buy them houses or helped them buy houses. So I think I really came to believe that the real estate agent role is critical in this process and that there's an extreme value in what they deliver and helping people transact a critical element of life and wealth building. And so I always knew I would get a license. I always knew in some capacity I would practice touch, be a part of real estate. And then I just happened to find out I didn't love my career in sales as I had it. So the two aligned pretty well. I had a passion that I knew I wanted to pursue and an opportunity that no longer met my needs. And the transition became a no-brainer.
Absolutely. And it's funny we're talking now. I don't know how this popped into my head. I was driving to the park yesterday and I was looking on the left, on the left side of the road, and I noticed a for sale by owner sign, right? So to me, it makes me think that person doesn't see the value in having an agent. Could you maybe talk a bit about, the value of working with a good real estate agent as opposed to maybe doing it on your own?
Absolutely. And we see that all the time. And I'll say right out the gate, I'm fundamentally not opposed to somebody trying to sell their own home. If you have the will, the ambition, the knowledge base, the marketing skills to do so, absolutely, you can functionally take on that endeavor by yourself. But the purpose of a great real estate agent, particularly for a seller, is ultimately to maximize your needs and to minimize headaches through the process. We want to get you the most amount that we possibly can within the market that exists, and we'll be very direct and honest with you on what we see in that market. We make tangible recommendations for updates that you should or need to do to be market ready for the buyers that we know are active in the marketplace right now. And we're going to make sure that your marketing is top notch because we live in a world where, whether you believe it or not, people are buying home through Instagram. Like, this world has fundamentally shifted to the point where it is not enough to take high def photos and put it on a website and call it a week. You've got to have a marketing strategy for each home. And it's not the same for every home, but you need a strategy to target buyers that are right for that home. And so the agents that do the best, in my opinion, their stats speak for themselves. Their clients sell faster for a higher dollar amount with fewer hiccups through the process than others do, statistically speaking. And most of that data is publicly available. But I think a lot of it comes down to your trust in that person to help you transact the home. And there are plenty of stats out there that, the critical error that most sellers make if they do take it on themselves is they overprice and they undermarket, and then they end up not selling for what they wanted to. So when you look at it on paper, real estate agents tend to do better. We sell at a higher percentage because we're more intelligent on the front end. Our strategy is sounder in the way we market the home and bring it to market. The pricing is a little bit tighter. So statistically, we do better. And that's why when you see FSBO versus, realtor-led homes, realtors tend to sell for a higher number.
Sure, absolutely. And it's so interesting because it seems like your words now are becoming more and more true, especially with the change in the market, right? You can kind of for lack of a better term, maybe it's separating the men from the boys or whatever you want to say, right?
Absolutely. Right. There was a time, I mean, early this year, even end of last year, when people were getting 18 offers on your home. Do I really think that you needed millions or, thousands of dollars in marketing to show your $1 million home? Probably not. You could take some photos and put up a Facebook post and get the ad live on the MLS and you get some offers within a week. So, yeah, there was a time where real estate became so, I don't want to use the word easy. I think it became so hyperactive that it
Mm.
became easier for either realtors who really aren't that great at their job to transact or people who don't really know how to sell a home to actually sell a home. And that does create false confidence, particularly now as we're heading into a market where it is not easy. And the signs are pointing that it's going to be even more difficult heading forward. So, there's this false sense of confidence, I think, on a professional and a personal level for sellers that does exist.
Absolutely, Matt. And it's such an interesting time that we're talking about this now. Obviously, we're, I guess you could say, mid-October. We're heading into the winter time. We're heading into the spring, and we don't know, what's in store for us, right? People could
Right.
argue we're in a recession right now. Maybe maybe it'll get slightly worse. No one really knows for certain.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing I know that we wanted to speak about was building a personal brand, and doing that to be able to leverage yourself to kind of ride out those hard storms. Could you kind of talk about what exactly a personal brand is and why it's significant to a real estate professional?
In my opinion, I think your brand is everything. We all have a brand, whether we think about it actively or not. The way we show up and carry ourselves, the way we introduce ourselves to our professional or our personal peers, our family, that is our brand. That is how people recognize, identify, and think of us. And so when I think of my brand in a professional sense, particularly as we head into a time where it's hard or going to be hard, my brand to me is sort of the identification of how I do business, right? It's an overview of who I am, what I stand for, how my clients engage with me. I think it's also a reflection of what I can deliver to them. So when I'm branding myself online, I'm constantly thinking of what do my clients need right now and how can I meet them there? What piece of content can I create or what value can I introduce to their life that'll in some way meet them at their need? Whether they're active today and they're searching, then that might be literally send them properties so that they can actually see things, or are they just thinking about buying and there's some kind of information I can share about the process that would maybe enlighten them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think the more that you stay true to your brand identity and whatever that is, and the more consistently you show up and be the brand that you want to be, the more people will remember that, respond to that, and you create a community that matters from it. So, for me, my brand has become, I mean, obviously I sell real estate and I'm always here to be a real estate advisor for my clients. I'm also an educator on social media, and I help other agents use and leverage social media to connect with other people, doing exactly what we're talking about, developing their brand and deploying it in a native way where they develop an audience that is loyal and they can grow a business from. And I think that's powerful. Brands last. When things get tough, numbers go up and down with good markets and bad markets, but brands last, and people who believe in a brand will be loyal to that brand even in difficult times.
Absolutely. And, I find it so interesting, Matt, is it's almost like with video content, for example. I've noticed whether you have a senior veteran agent, and even if you have a newcomer that's new to the industry, new to selling homes, a big problem they have in front of the camera or maybe making content is that sense of imposter syndrome, right? Even if they
Right.
are, even if they are knowledgeable, maybe they don't feel comfortable on camera. Could you kind of talk about maybe how our agents can get over that initial hump of imposter syndrome when making content?
Part of it is you just got to show up and do it. Um, a huge part of content making or content creation is vulnerability. You can choose to run a business page and a personal page and kind of keep them separate, but ultimately, the more you invite your audience to know you and the more you create a personal touch and attachment to you, the stronger and more powerful your brand becomes and your ability to connect with people becomes. Vulnerability is normally met with vulnerability from other people, and that is usually met with some kind of ability to do some pretty incredible things. So I think you need to start there. Don't expect perfection. You might hate every video you make. Even years in, I look at some of my videos, I'm like, oh my God, can't stand the way I sounded on that. But ultimately, the goal is not to make a perfect piece of content. It's not even to make something that goes viral. Honestly, you're just making consistent value and removing your ego and adding a little bit of vulnerability. I think what a lot of people start of imposter syndrome comes from the idea that you're not an expert. You're like, well, there's so many people who have bigger followings or have been doing this longer or close more. Why would people listen to me, or why should people listen to me? The reality is, in my industry, take it for example, the license is your expertise. You have something that other people don't know or have unless they go to school to get it. So you need to share that expertise with the world. And as you gain experience, that expertise becomes more valuable and people learn through storytelling. So I think every advisor, every real estate agent out there has a platform or a brand in which they could honestly share stories that come from experience that would leverage or help other people in their audience. And if everybody just kind of started with that base principle of, I want to help people, I'm not so worried about being perfect, and I'm just going to commit to adding value, I think we'd see so many people just like blow up overnight. Sincerely, it would be a very natural growth process.
Absolutely. And one word that I thought was interesting you used where was storytelling. And it reminded me, I was taught, to me it was I don't know if I'll do it much justice, but to me it sounded remarkable. I was talking to this lady who sells insurance here in Houston, and I noticed when she was telling me these things about insurance and her job, she was kind of weaving these stories. It was just like a concurrent set of stories as she was talking to me. And it was, to me, it was something very captivating, right? Like you think of insurance, maybe it's not the sexiest part of the business, maybe it's boring, but she made it very intriguing, and I wanted to listen.
I think that's everything. Storytelling is how, even, from the biggest brands to the smallest individual, the way that you remember things and the way that you have impact or emotional attachment, it's all storytelling, right? Your ability to create some kind of natural progression for an audience that keeps them entertained and keeps them in it till the end for you as a marketer, but also for them creates a learning experience. Because what do all great stories have, right? They have like a beginning, an arch, and an end, and there's some kind of conclusion with it. So if you're presenting that in a business sense, you're meeting your audience needs by telling them stories that help them draw conclusions that they can then depart in life, right? And I think that's why doing things like this, getting on a podcast and talking about something like why I got into real estate or how I started my business, hopefully somebody will hear that and that can be useful to them to go start that endeavor on their own, right? But the storytelling aspect is where it all begins.
Absolutely. And with the storytelling aspect, do you think it's more of just getting in front of the camera and doing those reps, or is it more, how do you really hone that craft of becoming a good storyteller to benefit the people that are watching your content?
I do think early on, just getting the reps. It's just like when you start in sales, most every sale person in sales started as a cold caller. At some part of the line, like you had to cold call. And I think that is for many reasons. It's to get you through the fear of talking to people and to get you used to rejection. And like you start to, with training wheels, develop the fundamental skills needed to run a sales business long term. So when I think about video, it's the same thing. Like if you're not just making content, how can you know how many ticks you have or what you dislike about the way you present things, or maybe when you talk too slow or when you talk too fast, or like how do you know those things until you look at it on camera and you refine your video and you audit it? And so I think in the beginning, you don't want to just create crap. You want to know who your audience is and know your voice and know your niche. But once you understand who you are and who you're talking to, just start creating. And then over time, refine it. Over time, you can develop the structure of how to deliver a great story. And you can work on, there truly is a 4 or 5 step process to like every story, from beginning to arch to end. And you want some kind of captivating hook, and you want some kind of deliverable conclusion, and you want something that creates emotional attachment. And so there are elements to storytelling that you can dive deep into. But in the beginning, if you're talking on camera, you're ahead of 90% of the audience already, right? And that's how I think about it. Like just get ahead by doing.
Yeah, well said. And those are, I guess, two common things that you talked about. You talked about, hey, if you have the license, you already have a bit of education that maybe the average person would normally have. And then also, really just sharing what you have to offer, right?
That's it. I mean, what else can you do, right? And when you think about vulnerability, that's what it is in its truest sense. You're looking at the world and saying, this is who I am. This is what I do. If you want to engage with it, great. I'd love to help you. If you don't, and it's not for you, I'm also okay with that. This is not a everybody must follow type approach. Your brand is your brand. It's not for everybody. And that's okay.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I'm curious as well. You mentioned, obviously the storytelling aspect I think is wonderful. That's a great skill to kind of hone and refine your craft. but also you mentioned the word audience, right? So
Mhm.
curious as well, maybe you're starting on the business, maybe you already have a bit of clientele and you're looking to speak to your audience and you don't exactly know if it's established. Do you want to make content just about, what you're passionate about in hopes of developing an audience, or do you want to speak to a specific person when you're making your content?
It's a great question. I think both can serve different needs. If your objective, let's just use a hard example, if your objective is to get into the multi-unit investment space and you are seeking people who want to make multi-unit investments, then yes, I think there is sound logic for you to focus on content that is about multi-unit investing and just dive deep on that specific niche so that you draw an audience who wants that and they will come to you for that. I also think there's benefit to understanding the people who watch you naturally. So, for example, when I started in 2018 just making content, I came up with 3 simple objectives. I was like, I want people to know that I became a real estate agent, flat out, objective A. B, I want them to know that I do it full time. This isn't a part-time gig. I went and do it full time. And C, I am actively practicing and can help them regardless of their need. So investor, tenant, buyer, seller, I can help you. And so those were the 3 objectives. Everything I made focused on one of those 3 goals. I'm practicing, I do it full time, and I can help you if you need it. And over time, I started to realize that I was creating content that was a little bit ahead of everybody else. I started to get captions and a little bit of creation and some production quality behind it. And so my audience not only was buyers, sellers, investors, but I started to gain a huge portion of business professionals, lenders, other real estate agents from around the country, from around the world, who liked my content, but then subsequently were also reaching out for connections about Chicago and became referral partners and things like that. So your audience speaks to you. And for me, my audience grew in a direction where I realized I have so many connections with my peers. That's where I leveraged the coaching opportunity and said, you know what, I want to ingrain with this community and help them grow. I'm doing something that a lot of people clearly want and are drawn to, but don't have the path to do themselves. And so that was my audience speaking to me. So to your question, know your audience as it exists and don't ignore that. But I think it's also extremely valid and valuable to have an idea of who your ideal audience would be or where you're headed, right? And if those are different, then you have to have a strategy for both.
Absolutely. And I love that insight there, Matt. And one big looming question that people have when you say the word social media, your mind can go into, so many different places, right? All these different platforms. You have TikTok and you have Instagram and you have the reels and the shorts and all these different things. Where do you even start? Do you want to go all chips all in on one platform, or do you kind of want to spread it out and just see where it grows? Or how would you start initially?
I would establish your threshold for pain. I mean, if you're active nowhere today, and this is a process of like you literally need to set up a profile somewhere and get started, then in some ways you have an advantage. Focus on whichever one's most busy. That's probably TikTok or Instagram right now. Learn that and become proficient at that. You don't need to do everything. If you're on everything and you're just looking for a way to refine your strategy, maybe the question is, where is your audience already most active? Or where are you getting some traction? Where do you like to post? I mean, ultimately, the biggest limiting factor in all of this is us. My biggest limiting factor in my business of social media is me. Yours is you. So, I mean, if you identify that the limiting factor is you feel like posting on all 5 platforms or whatever is too many for you, then narrow down. If you feel like you don't understand Instagram, focus on something else, right? Just remove the barrier. But I think there's if you're competent on each and you're comfortable on each, the biggest opportunity, in my opinion, is most likely Instagram Reels and TikTok, at least for the time being. Not to dissuade you from using any of the others, but those seem to get the most visibility right now.
And why do you think that is? It's interesting. I was I guess you see this guy everywhere. You see Gary V, right? And
Yeah,
he even
you
created his
literally can't avoid Gary Vee.
I swear I'm going to bed at night. I put my head on the pillow and Gary's talking to me.
He's there. Yes, I know that feeling.
But it's funny. He kind of made up his own little word, TikTokification, right? So
Mm-hmm.
could you maybe kind of explain why the social media platforms are gravitating towards the shorter form content as opposed to longer form?
Yeah, I mean, I make no claims to be an expert in like the psychology behind all this, but what I will say is I do think as humans, we've generally seen attention spans go down. The best quality content or the most people watch is like 30 to 60 seconds. So what Reels or TikTok has given the ability to do is break down long form content into really short, consumable form, right? Like video format that I can take in on the fly, even on mute while I'm sitting in a meeting at work. I can see something and consume it. And I think that's where Gary Vee capitalized on content creation, particularly with captions and things. And I think that's where you see things like the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard trial got more views on TikTok than it did on any nationalized televised channel, right? It was televised in its entirety, but more people by tenfold watched the TikTok clips. Because why would you watch the 8 hours to get the 30 seconds of drama when somebody's going to clip it for you on TikTok and you can watch that at the end of the day, right? And like that is where our world is headed. Nobody has time in their minds to consume something in long form. So they want the short form version. And the easiest way to consume that and the algorithms that are targeting specifically what you already like and feeding it to you are Reels and TikTok. So it's an addicting thing, sincerely. We can have all sorts of debate on how healthy that is, but it's an addicting way of consuming content.
Absolutely. And, that's so interesting, Matt. I actually did not know that about the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial. I believe it, though, because I mean, it was seemingly so long-winded, and you had all these ups and downs and this big roller coaster when some guy could just cut down the video and you could digest it in a few seconds, right?
It was unbelievable. And not only that, but that was actually part of this trend on TikTok where you're seeing an older audience get engaged. There was a long time, and it may even still be, that the primary user or category of TikTok is on the younger side, right? Like 30% or roughly there is somewhere around like that 18 to younger 20s range. But then if you add up the rest, I mean, 60 to 70% is in their like late 20s to mid 40s, in that range. And a lot of those users, particularly sort of the older users in that range, came on for things like the Johnny Depp trial, right? That was their introduction to TikTok. Oh, I don't have to wait for the news, or I don't have to watch this channel all day long. You mean I can just go see the funny clips? That's interesting enough to make me download the app. So that was part of this whole wave of actually like bringing a new generation into TikTok, was that trial. It's interesting to think about, but there are some things that are dragging the age of TikTok forward.
Wow, and that's so interesting. I actually didn't know that either. I'll never forget the first time I saw TikTok. You see these weird videos and these weird dances, and I just remember, no, it's not for me. And then I
Yeah.
guess,
Oh, yeah. In some people's mind, that's all it was, right? Like dance on screen and point at things. And then all of a sudden people are like, oh, wait, I think I'm getting financial advice now from TikTok. And all of a sudden I can watch the news on TikTok. And like, yeah, I mean, it's crazy as a user of TikTok to see how it's progressed in a relatively short period of time. But I also think the opportunity exists there. I mean, just personally for me, I think coming into this year, I mean, as of a few months ago, I had roughly 300 followers on TikTok. I'm now hovering somewhere at the time we record around 11,000. So that growth, in my mind, was exponential. That was it grew faster as a content creator than any other platform I've seen. And I think that just came from the nature of how content is consumed there, understanding my audience and meeting them at what they wanted to see.
absolutely, and that's wonderful insight. Congratulations. I mean, getting to 11,000, compared to where you had before, that's
Hey, thanks. Let's keep going, right? Every platform's got its own goals. So
yeah. So if you're watching, tell your friends, tell them to watch Matt's videos and get it up even higher, right?
I'll send you the links for everything, right? Yeah. Shameless plugs.
There you go. The shameless plug. I love it. But I'm curious as well. There's obviously, so many platforms. There's Instagram, there's TikTok, there's Facebook. To me, it can be very overwhelming. I have a 9 to 5 job. Maybe I have a significant other, a family to take care of.
Yeah.
Why in the heck should I spend all of my time, delegating, or I guess spending effort on different platforms? Is there a way for you to just make one video for different platforms, or would you need to make it for each platform?
I mean, you can't really survive this world as a marketer without repurposing. So you should be repurposing videos and using them across platforms. I mean, you might even be posting the exact same video on each platform because your audience is not the same across each. Each is a little bit different. There's different strategies involved. I use the example all the time of, if you're going to upload a reel, it's the exact same format as TikTok. So you should be saving that video and uploading it to TikTok, or vice versa. Whichever you want to start on, it should end on the other one. So save yourself the time. Why would you take this time to create what is hopefully a valuable piece of content and put all this effort into it and then not maximize the utility of it and share it with as many people as possible through as many mediums as possible? So There are certainly apps and things that can help you do that, but at a very basic level, I'm a huge fan of repurposing content. And even, you brought up Gary Vee, he has this really powerful content idea of the content pyramid. And that's the idea of filming long form video, 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes, whatever it is. And then you chop that video down into a lot of different 30 to minute long clips, and you redistribute those as reels. So rather than making one long form video like this podcast that we're doing right now, we could cut this down into 15 different 30-second clips of our conversation, share that for our audience, draw them into the podcast. It creates value long term. People might get actually more value out of the short term because they don't watch the full long term. So there's a huge opportunity in the way you repurpose content and use it across platforms.
Absolutely. And that's so well said. I didn't know that Gary called it, what was it, the pyramid you said?
I believe if he calls it like the content pyramid. Yeah, like, the top of the pyramid being the long form video, the one standalone piece. And then the next level is sort of the cuts and the edits from that into reels. And then below that, he actually takes quotes of things that he said and puts them in a tweet or puts them just on a stagnant video background or whatever. Or he might take an audio clip and put that over some unrelated video and release that. So, I mean, really what Gary Vee comes up with is every week he's making like 3 to 4, long form pieces of content. And I might be butchering the exact numbers, but ultimately what he's getting out of that is for each long form piece of content, he's able to create like 20 pieces of additional content. So his 3 to 4 long form videos become like 60 pieces of content he can release across the spectrum. Now, as you hear that, you're going to be like, holy shit, I don't know how I have time to do that. I'm so overwhelmed. Gary Vee hires a team of God knows how many people to do that full time. So, but the concept is sound, right? Create long form, repurpose, reuse, save yourself some time on the original creation part, just focus on the editing part and get more content out there.
Absolutely. That's so well said. And I'm curious as well, if you'd like to name some names, that's fine. But what's an example of a good personal brand, or, are there any particular not, maybe not the word rules, but just anything that these good brands have in common, maybe principles that they abide by?
I think I always give a few different examples for different reasons here, but I think a brand is how you identify it. So the one that most people know, and the reason I like to use him, is Ryan Serhant. So what Ryan has accomplished with his personal brand is pretty incredible. I mean, he's selling billions of dollars of real estate with a B, and he sells hundreds of millions of dollars every year through social media, literally through ads on Facebook, outreach through Instagram, and direct message contacts from people he's engaged through social media that sign up for a newsletter. It's unbelievable the extent of success he's had to it. But if you look at his brand, it is very focused. Everything Ryan releases is 10 million, 50 million, $100 million condo somewhere in New York. You don't see him going around doing $300,000 tours on the Bronx, right? And maybe those don't exist. But the bigger point is that he is focused on ultra luxury, ultra high end. He's telling a story. He's inviting these sellers to be world renowned, seen in magazines, seen on TV. That's a brand. He's carrying this luxury image that is the exact box that many of the uber wealthy want. And that has drawn the Serhant brand to what it is. What he's a master of is storytelling, right, for these spaces. And that's how you get drawn into everything. So I do think that if you're looking, not that you need to replicate it because the money behind it's unbelievable, but I think just a good example of somebody who's capitalized on brand is Ryan Serhant. Another one that I really like is like Glenda Baker. So she's a real estate agent out of Georgia, I believe. A little bit different, comes at it from a totally different approach. It's like much more homegrown. She just tells stories. It's just her talking to a camera, but she's grown a massive following. She has done so much good real estate from this. And it was as simple as, I think I'm interesting. I think I have things to say, and I'm going to do it on camera consistently for my audience. And the one thing that she nails is just vulnerability. I mean, she'll tell stories that I'm sitting there like my skin's crawling thinking about it as a professional, but she brings you in to her pain so that you get something out of it, right? And I think that's what the best content creators or the best brands do, is they bring you in on not just the good, because there's so much good, it's easy to get lost in social media, but on everything, behind the scenes, on the bad, the ugly, the painful, the horrific. The more that you're invited to be a part of their life and their brand, you become tied to things. That's why Serhant will mix in with the $50 million all glass looking at Central Park listing, a picture of him and his daughter having ice cream on the boardwalk, right? People are drawn to him, even though the brand is so powerful on its own.
Absolutely. And that's a neat mix in there as well, because, it's easy to kind of see Ryan Serhan as this, as a machine, right? He's just, cranking out real estate deals, left and right. But when you see him with his daughter eating an ice cream, you're like, oh, wow, Ryan's a human, right?
Absolutely. He does a lot of posts on the importance of travel and with family. And yeah, I mean, there's haters are always going to hate. You'll see comments like, of course you can afford to take your family to Greece. You make $1 billion a year, and like, yeah, he does. And he's earned that. And the fact that he's vulnerable enough to mix in and not shy away from the fact that, yeah, he does earn a lot of money, but he does good with it. He's delivering a high value service. And oh, by the way, it seems, at least from social media, that he's doing a pretty good job of being a dad on the side. So like I think that he's done a nice job of inviting people in to his life, right, in an earnest way. It's not, it is flashy in some ways because he's earned a flashy lifestyle, but I think in many ways it's just vulnerable. You're allowing people into the good, the bad, the ugly of family. We all know how that goes.
Yeah, yeah, well said. And I'm curious as well. I know we talked a bit about, getting started on these platforms, obviously the storytelling, speaking to your audience. What are maybe some daily actionable steps that good brand creators, good content creators will do?
I first and foremost, if you can't do daily, it's not the end of the world. I think consistency does not mean every single day. If consistency for you is 3 days a week, that's fine. Do 3 days a week. If consistency for you is every single day, 3 times a day, great, good on you. Get it done. But I don't think that you need to overwhelm yourself out the gate by saying, I have to post every day, and that's why it's so stressful for me. I would say if you're going to do anything, early on, identify your audience and your voice. You should know who you are, what services you deliver, what services you don't deliver, and exactly who you want to be communicating with. Like before you say anything, know who's listening to it and who you are that's saying it. And if you start there and then just set yourself up for a schedule of consistency, as in if you're going to do it 3 days a week, make the time to do it 3 days a week. And then long term, you can evaluate for growth, right? If you want to lean into batch filming, or if you want to learn how to storytell, if you want to get better at editing, if you want to hire any of that process out because you don't want to do it, that all comes in time. But early on, I think the critical elements are figure out who you are, figure out what your voice is, figure out who's listening to that voice, and then start creating content. Just go produce content. And at the background of it all, at the spine of everything that you create, value for your audience, not for you. What do they need that you can give them in some capacity that will hopefully be beneficial? If you do that, I think you have a pretty good chance of being successful.
Absolutely. And that's some wonderful insight there as well. And, obviously, you're a very, well-versed real estate professional. Obviously you're very well-versed on social media as well. If you wouldn't mind, could you also talk about the services that you offer and how you help real estate pros?
Yeah. So I, on top of my real estate brokerage business and just selling real estate day to day, I also offer coaching services. So it's sort of twofold. It's individual and group coaching. The individual coaching part of it is with me. We do a 90-day start. The idea being that really, no matter where you are in your journey, we're going to identify exactly what I just talked about, what your voice is, what your niche is, who your audience is, and come up with a content plan of content that will get engagement, not just make noise. It's not really about views. I don't care if you get 500 people that see your content. What I care about is if you get 5 to 10 people who reach out to you and have great conversations about that content. That's where business is done. So we come up with a strategy to help you create engaging conversations that will help your audience grow over time. We help you find your voice and develop how you actually create over time. And then in the background of it all, there's a group coaching element as well. So we have accountability pods because, as I said in the beginning, the biggest bottleneck to this all is ourselves. So somebody is there to help hold you accountable to what you said you're going to do. And then we also have an interactive group that's developing on Facebook so that we can do weekly check-ins. People can share what's working, what's not working, questions, concerns, all that good stuff. But the goal of it all is that many of us are consumers of social media, but have done absolutely nothing to become creators on it. And if we have started creating, we certainly don't recognize the path to monetization from that. So my whole goal is to help primarily realtors or real estate professionals hone their focus, develop their social media strategy so that they reflect the brand they want to reflect, and they connect with clients that they want to connect with, ultimately in the sake of growing their business.
Absolutely. Well said there, Matt. Well, is there anything you haven't said thus far you'd really just like to hit home for us?
What I will say is just I have a unique opportunity to talk about my city. So I will just say that if you are thinking about looking at a new city to call home, I love Chicago, and the clients that I've helped find homes here truly have been so happy with the investments they've made. If there are some particular investments here, such as multi-units, if you're looking to be like a house hacker in a 2, 3, or 4 flat, this is one of the best cities in the United States to do that. And I think at surface value, we often get a bad rep for any number of reasons. But I think particularly I have investors who look at this city and accomplish their goals every single day. And I have very happy homeowners who come to this city and who help it thrive every single day. So if you haven't thought about it, if you haven't been, even though I know it's cold and it's going to get colder, this is a fantastic city worth checking out. And I'm always happy to be a resource. If you're coming here professionally and you're seeking guidance on neighborhoods or whatever, I would love to help you out. Or if you're just coming to town and you want recommendations for a couple restaurants, I lived in the city for a long time now, and I'm more than happy to help.
Okay, definitely well said. And yeah, I've always enjoyed my time in Chicago as well. I guess, summertime shy, it's always nice to catch a game.
Best summer city in America. I don't know. People will argue with me, but I think it's true. So sure, we only get that summer for like 2 to 3 months, but who's counting?
There you go. There you go. Well, it's definitely a beautiful time. I sure do enjoy it over there.
Well, next time you come out, we'll have to get together. Absolutely. I mean, this is a great show that you've done here, and I appreciate you bringing me on to participate. Just it's always great to talk about not only my city, obviously, but just this job. I love what I do, and I've had a lot of fun with the content production side of it. So
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely looking to get together. And Matt, thank you again for coming on the show. It's definitely been neat, hearing a bit more about your background, kind of transitioning from the tech sales side into you're obviously passionate about real estate, and a lot of the different insight that you offered on social media. That's not only very relevant, but also is actionable that people can actually do. So I've learned a lot, and thank you again for joining us tonight.
appreciate the opportunity. Looking forward to having more conversations down the line, and truly, sincerely, to your audience, hopefully you got something out of this. So
Sounds great. We'll talk to you later.
take care.